Hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Denman, and I want to welcome you to Denman's Den. Today is Tuesday, October 28th, 2025. And yesterday, I had something happen in the early morning that motivated me to do a lot of research and investigation. And the result was the reflection that I'm going to share with you right now. Um, what motivated me was my usual routine in the mornings when I wake up is to go over the news of the day and take a glimpse at my social media pages and see how they're doing. And then, maybe write in my journal and take some time for prayer and meditation. And then I get off to a start with my day that way. Well, yesterday morning, during my time looking at some social media posts, I a friend of mine wrote a lovely poem, which I replied to and complimented and encouraged her and told her it was just a wonderful, very spiritual and insightful reflection, and I appreciated it very much. But one of her repliers was one of the, I would say, far right so called evangelicals who uh, was very judgmental and critical and used a lot of scriptures that she kind of cherry picked from here and there in the Bible to sort of back up her ideas that my friend was actually not a Christian and not someone that was truly following Jesus. And uh, she was extremely negative. And so I felt the need to reply to this woman with based on my own education from seminary with a master's of divinity, and I was able to take probably every single one of the scriptures that she sort of cherry picked and point out to her how she basically used them wrongly. And then finally to just point out to her that she cannot be judgmental of other people's faith. She needs to focus on her own faith. But my curiosity also got the better of me, to be honest with you, and so I went to her Facebook page and noted that she also was a Trumpster, a MAGA uh, follower, and that once again, for the umpteenth time, I just see the marriage of these two groups of people, and they it's like they where one goes, so goes the other. And probably for the past 8 or 9 years, I've been questioning, why, what attracts them to each other, and why are they still together, and what the heck is this all about? Inquiring minds want to know, and I'm one of those inquiring minds. And so I decided to embark on a research journey and investigation, and I spent all day yesterday pretty much reading and finding all kinds of articles and studies uh, and looking at historians as well as political scientists as well as other kinds of research and thoughts on the subject. And the results of that research are what I'm about to share with you right now. And the my thoughts have a title, and the title is "The Unholy Marriage of Trump and Evangelical Power." And uh, I have sort of put these thoughts together just slightly differently than I usually do. Uh, this particular reflection has 6 parts to it, and each part I'll be telling you the name of the part as well as showing you a visual prop so that you know which section we're in, and you can follow along much more easily that way. And so, without further discussion on my part, I will just begin to share this with you. Evangelicals once declared that character counts. They demanded moral purity, family values, and repentance from sinners. Yet, when Donald Trump swaggered onto the political stage, a man whose life reads like an inventory of the 7 deadly sins, white evangelicals did not recoil. In fact, they crowned him as God's chosen instrument. To outsiders, it looked like blinding hypocrisy. But Trump's hold over the religious right is not a moral failure. It is the inevitable result of what American evangelicalism has become. The movement's allegiance to Trump springs from a fusion of authoritarian religion, white nationalism, and fear of social change, a union sanctified by the myth of divine purpose. Section 1, authoritarian religion, the craving for certainty. The roots of this craving for certainty run far deeper than the Trump era or even modern fundamentalism. Long before the moral majority, the focus on the family, the Heritage Foundation, the Christian right, the Puritans imagined America as a, quote, city upon a hill, end quote. A covenant nation bound by a divine mandate. Their theocratic vision fused faith with governance, enforced moral purity through authority, and treated dissent as danger. In their colonies, to belong to the political community was to belong to the faith. Religious purity was not a private conviction, but a civic requirement and responsibility. This early bringing together and fusion of national identity and religious absolutism planted the seeds of Christian nationalism centuries before it even had a name. And it trained generations and generations of Americans to see faith and power not as two separate realms, but as two halves of a single covenant. Fundamentalist evangelicalism emerged in the 20th century as the next chapter of that story, a movement designed not to adapt to modernity, but to resist it. When scientific inquiry, pluralism, and a more progressive, thorough, well-investigated theology challenged its moral universe, it responded by building a fortress. The Scopes trial of 1925 made that posture visible to the nation. Evangelicalism wasn't just defending a doctrine of creation, it was asserting control over cultural authority. That defensive certainty grew even deeper during the Cold War, when evangelicalism intertwined itself with nationalism, casting America as a righteous, chosen nation locked in a cosmic struggle with the godless enemies of an evil empire. Under that banner, faith and patriotism became indistinguishable. By the late 20th century, the movement had learned to convert religious obedience into political loyalty. The moral majority and the Christian right rose. Not first in defense of the unborn, as is commonly spread around, but that narrative is false. The moral majority, the Christian right, the focus on the family, and all the other evangelical far-right groups rose in defense of segregation. A racist, reactionary movement cloaked in theology. Dominion theology then sanctified the idea of taking power for God. And charismatic leaders trained believers to equate absolute authority with divine will and order. Decades of male patriarchal church structures, authoritarian preaching, and political entanglement prepared the ground for a strong man figure to take the reins of government. So when Trump declared, "I alone can fix it," evangelicals did not hear the vulgar boast of a narcissist. They heard the familiar language of power, sanctified by a faulty faith, festering to its very roots with boils of absolutism, nationalism, and racism. Section 2. White nationalism. Saving Christian America. The joining together of racial hierarchy and Christian identity in America did not begin in the 1960s or the 1970s. It reaches all the way back, more than 100 years before, to the failure of Reconstruction after the Civil War, when white supremacy reasserted itself, not only through violence and through law, but through pulpits. Southern Protestant churches sanctified segregation as God's natural order, preaching a moral vision in which whiteness was synonymous with Christian civilization. Jim Crow was not merely a legal system, it was a theological foundation of American Protestant evangelicalism, enforced and justified in sanctuaries as well as courthouses. By the time desegregation reached Christian schools in the 1970s, white evangelicals were not discovering a new cause. They were defending a long-time heritage. Trump's promise to make America great again resonates with them because it revives a story this country has told itself for generations. That power, faith, and whiteness are bound together in a single moral destiny. While the modern Christian right presented itself as a moral movement, its roots were entwined with the defense of segregation and racial hierarchy. Leaders like Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson rose to prominence not over abortion, but in opposition to federal desegregation orders affecting schools and churches. What they framed as quote-unquote religious liberty was at its core a demand to preserve racial control. This moralized version of white nationalism created a powerful political identity that merged religion, race, and patriotism. Trump did not invent this identity. What he did was he activated it. His language about real Americans, law and order, and taking our country back fit neatly into a narrative that had been incubating for more than a century. Beneath the hymns and slogans lies a cultural heritage built on exclusion and caste. The nostalgic longing for a Christian America is less about Christianity and about faith, and more about hierarchy. A yearning for a world where white, Christian, male, patriarchal power was unchallenged. This is why Trump's movement could fuse and marry seamlessly with evangelicalism. It was not foreign to it. It was part of its long story. Section 3. The siege mentality. Fear as faith. Trump did not just exploit fear. He baptized it, and thereby gave it full membership in the Evangelical Church. For decades, evangelical media has told believers that they are under attack from liberals, from atheists, from feminists, and from woke culture. Every advance in civil rights or social equality becomes another front in a spiritual war. Trump mastered that narrative. He told his supporters, and I quote directly from the text of his speech. He said, "They're not after me. They're after you. I'm just in the way." And in that line, he cast himself as a martyr and his followers as persecuted saints. The result was a powerful emotional loop The more they feared cultural change, the more they clung to him, and the more he stoked their fear. To Trump's adoring base of devotees and followers, every indictment, every scandal, and every accusation to them only proves his divine mission. After all, he suffers for them. He is persecuted for them. He is their shield against a godless world and an America that is becoming more and more godless. In this way, Trumpism functions, quite frankly, as a faith. But a faith that replaces repentance with grievance, forgiveness with vengeance, compassion with cruelty, and worships power as the highest virtue. Section 4. The myth of divine purpose. One face blesses, the other curses. The two-faced image of a gospel, unrecognizable to the crucified man whose only face was love. No political alliance survives without a theology to bless it. And evangelicals have supplied one. The idea that God uses, quote unquote, imperfect vessels to achieve his will. Trump, they say, is flawed, but chosen. A biblical figure sent to protect the faithful. The prosperity gospel reinforces this illusion. In that distorted theology, wealth and dominance are proof of divine favor. Trump's gold towers and self-glorification are not offensive. They inspire. They're inspirational. His cruelty is seen as strength. His corruption as cleverness. The moral calculus is completely inverted. Kindness becomes weakness. Humility becomes naivete. Truth becomes irrelevant. There is an ancient face to this modern myth. Like the Roman god Janus, the two-faced god of beginnings and endings, Trump's evangelical supporters project a deity who smiles on them and scowls on their enemies, who is merciful to the chosen and merciless to the condemned. This two-faced dual image is not Christianity. It is a political mythology draped in religious language. The God of the Gospels, who refuses power and blesses the peacemakers, has been replaced with a Janus-faced God who both crucifies and conquers, both rewards and punishes, both saves and smites. It is a theology designed not to transform hearts, but to justify dominion, exclusion, and greed. In this myth, cruelty becomes strength, vengeance becomes righteousness, riches become blessings, and empire is consecrated as God's will. Section 5. Faith as a political weapon. The consequences of this unholy marriage are profound. The fusion of church and cult corrodes democracy and degrades faith into blind allegiance. Politically, it transforms citizens of a democracy into followers of a cult, and well-considered, critically investigated spiritual understanding into heresy. When blind belief replaces informed evidence, and unquestioned loyalty trumps law foundational to our republic, democracy collapses into a theocracy of personality. The January 6th insurrection showed exactly where that path leads. Crosses and Jesus Saves banners waving beside Confederate flags and nooses. Spiritually, the damage may be irreversible. Young people are leaving the church in record numbers, repelled by the hypocrisy of a Christianity, so-called, that preaches love but practices cruelty. The gospel of grace has been replaced by the gospel of grievance. What remains is not faith, but faction, a weaponized religion that worships the flag more than the cross. Section 6. The path forward. Trump did not corrupt evangelicalism. He revealed the corruption that was already there. The movement that once claimed to follow a carpenter from Nazareth now follows a billionaire who sells resentment as redemption and daily preaches lies as truth. This is not a detour from the history of evangelicalism, but the culmination of it. Centuries of preaching hierarchy, false and distorted messages, power, and purity have produced a political faith perfectly suited for authoritarianism. Because when faith serves empire rather than humanity, it ceases to be faith. It becomes idolatry. And in that mirror, evangelicals may finally see that the false god they've been worshiping all along is power itself. If American Christianity is to survive with its soul intact, it must disentangle itself from empire and rediscover the radical heart of its founder, the one who said, "The last shall be first. The peacemakers will be blessed. The greatest among us shall be the servant of all. Enemies are to be loved. And the truth shall set us free. Thank you for listening to my reflection and to the feelings that I know you can hear in my sharing of it that are behind it. I really seriously want to encourage you to interact with me on this. Please, please write some comments. Share your thoughts in those comments. You can do that on my Facebook page. You can do that on the blog page, and you can do it on YouTube as well. But I really want to be able to hear you, listen to you, have you interact with the material that I've shared with you, and allow me the opportunity to then dialogue with you about it. So please, please, please listen, reflect, comment, and by all means subscribe and share this material. I would be very grateful. Thank you for joining me today in Denman's Den, and I will see you again very soon. You take care.